Well, blessed Friday to you as we continue to work through Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Life Together, and also the second section called The Day with Others. What it means to worship together. We've been talking about different styles, the we versus the I focus, the new versus the old, a lot of tensions that can happen about our differences rather than the common thing that we confess as Jesus Christ. And so on the top of 61, it says, for practice and unison singing, we should adopt first the Reformation chorales, then the hymns of the Bohemian Brethren, and then those of the ancient church. Starting here, one's judgment as to which hymns of our hymn book lend themselves to such rendition, and those which do not will be formed quite of itself. Any doctrine or attitude which we meet with so often in this area comes of evil. The decision in this issue can only be made on the merits of each case, and here too we must not be iconoclastic. The Christian Family Fellowship will therefore try to master as large as possible a number of hymns that can be sung freely from memory. It will achieve the same if in every devotion it includes, besides the freely selected hymns, several stanzas that may be sung between the readings. Oh, how many people have been stuck into their own style. And that's been something that I have had an odyssey with, and I've been talking to you about that. I want to come to one last area that I had learned and I'd become a little bit hardened to, and that was actually the singing, if not the chanting of psalms. This was probably one of my last areas of innovation as of yet, but I learned how to do it. And it is meaningful. In fact, the Psalms are important as we have been reading, right? They are the ones where we not only sing together, but we sing with Christ, because this is the hymn book that Christ had. This is where we get to enter into the Psalms. But one aspect of it was so important. When we were learning to chant the Psalms, at least in a group of Lutheran pastors that I learned how to do it with, I belong to a group that chants them regularly. It's called the Society of the Holy Trinity. And one of the things that we were taught there was you're not worship leading when you're chanting the Psalms. And that was because a lot of us were taught, well, make up for the difference when people aren't singing, lead the congregation in singing. And so we'd get up and be robust in our singing. And this pastor calmly just said, you're too loud if you cannot listen or hear your neighbor. And I think that can happen in regular worship, whether we're chanting or not. You're too loud if you cannot hear your neighbor. Because that's, once again, why we are gathered together. Now, I've had little flubs many times where I've left my microphone on and I've learned my voice is loud enough that I need to shut it off. Because, well, I dominate with the preaching and maybe even some of the chanting parts of it. This is about not me. It's about us together. And that is a reminder to us that we dare not get into stuck types of worship. I know one time, and I'll just mention this, when I was at the youth gathering, there was a very famous worship leader. His name is Agape, and he is a rapper. Now, I'll tell you, I like a lot of contemporary Christian music. I haven't really gotten into rap. But I tell you, Agape was a person who could get you into music and to worship and to see that even that style that I was very adverse to could be used to worship. Now, on a very opposite side of things, although very word-oriented, would be chanting the Psalms was another one. I did not find chanting the Psalms particularly inspiring. In fact, I remember the first time I remembered going to a church that did chant the Psalms. It was my godparents' church in Bloomington. And I'm a person that responds sometimes inappropriately. I giggled throughout the whole thing. I know my dad had to discipline me because I'd never heard that before, and it sounded artificial. And sometimes the chants that are given are, yes, imposed, although if one listens to the ancient rabbis, or sometimes there's recordings of rabbis chanting the Psalms, they'll find that is very close to the way many of us in Lutheran, Roman Catholic, and Episcopal, or even Eastern Orthodox chant the songs. And there's some of those chant songs in our Lutheran hymnal. I would say in my area, not too popular. In fact, probably not well accepted if I introduced it one Sunday, but it is another form of worship. I bring these up because he says that we need to avoid being iconoclastic, and what that means is making an idol of the style and the type of music we worship with. Now, this can also come with the contemporary movement, and I used to fully espouse this. Anything old was bad, everything had to be new, and I really, really disliked the old hymns. And now, coming from the other side, as a person who learned the old hymns, I kind of have an aversion to the new, and I'm like going, what's going on, Lord? And it's just like, because my heart is prone to idols, whether it be old or new, whether it be a certain style or not. I often find myself just resonating with certain styles and then avoiding certain styles. And I got to make sure that I am not hindering any person in their faith. In fact, that's where Jesus is very angry with his believers, is when we're hindering someone in their faith development, because we might think that their style is too childish or too we might think inappropriate, and there are times where we do have to make a judgment call and say that that is not the proper thing to be worshiping with at this time in this place or manner. Of course, even David was prone to that with his first wife, who, when it said that she was so embarrassed by the way he was worshiping the Lord. So, I mean, that can happen even in biblical times, but want to make sure that we are not locking ourselves into one style, one type. And it's easy to do. And it's something that we need to work on as far as our worship together, because our unity is primarily in the words that unify, and the Word who unifies, Jesus Christ himself. Take care. God bless. We'll see you next time.